Nice to meet you guys. I wanted to know because this movie is something that, or sorry, this show is being simulcast, and each of you have a respective actor that does the Japanese version. Did any of you meet with the other person who's doing the same role as you no, not
Oh no, that would
Jessica.
have been an honor. That would have been a really huge honor. I also did dubbed a Japanese movie called Pupil of Chimney Town, and I did get to meet one of the actors from that. But it's rare that you get to meet somebody, your alter ego. For me, anyway. I don't know about you guys.
Well,
Yeah, I didn't get to meet any. I've never met someone who's dubbing me or who I'm dubbing. I did occasionally get audio clips of her in the rough cut. And I know she also got audio clips of me in the rough cut. If one of us had scheduled our recording session before the other, sometimes they would just put in dialogue, even if it's in English or Japanese, just so that they can hear something there. So I would have this interesting, because I wasn't dubbing her, but that I got a bit of that experience when they would send.
You can get a tone if you hear a little bit of it. You get the tone of.
Yeah, like I wasn't trying to match her in any way, because
Right.
sometimes I would hear it and go like, you know what, she killed it, so I'm just going to do what she did, and hopefully she said the same thing about me.
What about you, Will?
I mean, what I find interesting is that I didn't get to meet any of the cast on the American side, which is crazy till just now. So yeah, and it is interesting. I think the directors were, you never know when you're crossing language barriers, like if the nuances are going to be kept. And what I loved about the directors was their attention to the layers and bringing all the performances down and not going against the grain of what we considered in the past, like anime being big and being, trying to indicate as many things as possible. And what I loved about them is even just, a small breath, just even when you grab something, and we would do a take where you just literally he would say, okay, you're tired here, you're weary. And we would do that take 20 or 30 times because they were just trying to get the exact emotion of the scene, which felt like I was on a film set in a lot of ways.
That's great. You can put all the colors that you want.
Yeah.
When you're directed by a really good voice director. So
absolutely
lucky, right?
Thank you guys for fleshing that answer out.
Oh.
Also, Will, this is Stephen and Jess. Since you guys haven't met before, I'm glad that you can all make each other's acquaintance.
No, it's great.
No, it's really cool. It's funny. When we got hooked into the call, I was like, Will, I feel like we've crossed paths so many times, and I'm such a big fan. And if you haven't seen his YouTube documentary, it's really good, but there's no ending. So I felt finally I get to meet you.
Oh, Jess, you're sweet.
And here I thought Altered Carbon was your documentary. I'm curious because it is 2032, and really now we've caught up, and it's only a decade away. What's the hardest part for you guys when you're voicing, and it seems like it's almost real life today, but you have to look at it as it's a lot more further into the future when you're giving these performances?
I mean, I think the hardest thing is how long a show like this takes, as for me to have shot, to actually have done it. Like, you'll go and shoot, you'll go and be in the booth for 2 days, and then you won't hear from them for 7 months, and you come back and you're like, what's my character's name? And I think that is the hardest thing, is constantly trying to find the through line. But
I agree with that 100%, because you've probably done 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever animated things before that, and so it's to be able to have some kind of reference when you come back is really important, and they do have that, and they can show you clips of what you did or what they've just animated, so it's helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And that if we're rusty on questions, it is because we recorded this more than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But in terms of the time aspect question of, gosh, I can't believe it's set in 10 years time. For me, because Elle is kind of timeless, I didn't really approach it as let me make her sound modern or let me make her sound futuristic. She's such a fish out of water that it was more let me make her sound naive. Let me make her sound like someone who hasn't picked up modern intonation and sort of slang and all of that. It's like giving a baby a voice. I wanted it to sound like someone who doesn't know words. And then obviously grow, and she grows throughout the season and becomes more and more firm in her voice. But at the beginning, I really wanted to sound sort of innocent.
It was oddly poetic. I really like the way you put that answer.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know for you guys, obviously you guys have all been in sci-fi projects, but one specifically, like Will, you were in Altered Carbon, which is very, very much inspired by Blade Runner. I'm curious, with you having been in that side of something that's been inspired and then now Blade Runner afterwards, is there anything that you've noticed more about your previous project that was inspired by this now that you have explored this world?
I mean, there's so many sequences in the first season, even the second season of Altered Carbon, where we've said it, the cast members have said it a million times every time we entered this space, which is we shot it in Canada, and Skydance had built essentially it felt like the Blade Runner world, and you'd walk into these stages and you would no longer feel like you were on a stage. You felt like you were in the movie. And so, yeah, when you watch, when I watch the trailer for this Blade Runner, or just being in the world of Altered Carbon, it feels like a familiar place, which is bizarre to me that I feel like it's a place I've been to.
Do either of you have that experience like that with one of your previous projects? Because obviously, Stephen, you've been in lots of things, but Jessica, you are more on the side of fiction, science fiction.
I'd have to think about that. I'd have to go through my previous jobs one by one, because the impact of Blade Runner was so huge. It's so much is derived from it. It's kind of hard to quantify something that was such a huge pop culture moment. I mean, I'm sure there's something in season 1 of Iron Fist, for sure. At the end, in the rain, the monologue, yeah, definitely. Or even The Matrix. I'm sure if I spoke to Lana about it, she would. I did bring up the Tears in the Rain monologue once on set, and she said, I have a whole story about that, which I will tell you. And I never asked her the story, and I should have. But yeah, there's a lot of homages across my work, I'm sure.
And my stuff, I remember I was in a movie called Bicentennial Man, and I was a huge Asimov fan anyway. So all that kind of science fiction stuff. I mean, I grew up being a huge science fiction fan. I think the first time I got to Vancouver, it looked like a science fiction city to me. I don't know if anybody's been there, but their buildings look like it's straight out of Blade Runner 2049. So I always feel when I go there to shoot something that it should be science fiction. But that's my background is love of science fiction.
Thank you guys so much for entertaining me.